this demonstration, we will show you how to create a partition policy and partition policy details using the ABL API. Recall that if you want to use the ABL API for Table Partition Management, it is recommended that you first use the Database Administration console to create one partition policy and at least one partition policy detail. You can see how to do this in the video Creating a Partition Policy and Partition Policy Details using the Database Administration console. Remember that in our example, we started with a new partition table, TP Purchase Order, with a number of fields. It had a primary unique global index, PO num global IDX, based on the PO num column, and a local index, supplier ID num local IDX, based on the supplier ID num column. In the first video, we used the Database Administration console to create a partition policy, TP invoice, and 3 associated partition policy details, TP invoice _1999, TP invoice _2009, and TP invoice _2019 for the TP invoice table. In this demonstration, we will start with a policy we created for the TP invoice table and use the ABL API to partition TP purchase order by list based on the supplier ID num column. We start by accessing the TP invoice partition policy. From the Database Administration console, we click Database Administration, Database Connections. A new Database Administration tab appears, with the left pane showing the Sports Code database connection. We click the Sports Code database connection. The right pane displays 5 sections of information about the database, including the Storage Management section. From the Storage Management section, we click Partition Policies. The Table Partition Policy page appears. We click TP Invoice. The Edit Table Partition Policy page appears. We click Generate Policy Program and save it as create_policy_po.p in the directory C OpenEdge Work Table Partitioning. Next, we open create_policy_po in Progress Developer Studio for OpenEdge. Now we configure property values for a partition policy and associated partition policy details for TP Purchase Order table. In the new partition policy method, we specify TP Purchase Order. In the getTable method, we specify TP Purchase Order. Since we will partition TP Purchase Order by list, we specify No in the HasRange property. We specify TP Purchase Order Data 1 as the default storage area for the table's data in the getArea method. We specify TP Purchase Order Index 1 as the default storage area for the table's indexes. We specify TP Purchase Order Data 1 as the default storage area for the table's lobs. We specify Immediate in the default allocation property. Since supplier ID num is our partition field, we specify supplier ID num in the find method on the field's collection. And since our local index, supplier ID num local IDX, is based on the supplier ID num field, we specify supplier ID num local IDX in the find method on the indexes collection. The supplier ID num field consists of supplier IDs from 1 to 10, so we will define 10 partition policy details for them. For the first partition policy detail, we specify TP Purchase Order-1 as the name. Because this partition is for a new partition table, we specify No in the isSplit_Target property. We specify TP Purchase Order Data 1 as the default area for this partition's data, TP Purchase Order Index 1 as the default area for this partition's indexes, and TP Purchase Order Data 1 as the default area for this partition's lobs. We specify 1 in the setValue method to indicate the supplier ID num value 1. we remove the rest of the partition policy details associated with the TP invoice table. We copy and paste the code for the first partition policy detail, starting from partition policy detail equals service, new partition policy detail, to partition policy detail, allocate. Then, we just change the partition policy detail name to TP purchase order -2, and the set value method parameter value to 2. For better performance, we spread the partitions across different storage areas by specifying TP purchase order data 2 as the default area for this partition's data, TP purchase order index 2 as the default area for this partition's indexes, and TP purchase order data 2 as the default area for this partition's lobs. This defines the second partition policy detail. We repeat this step to define the remaining 8 partition policy details. Then we save create_policy_po.p. Next, we launch proenv by clicking Start, All Programs, Progress, OpenEdge 11.4, proenv. We switch to the directory C, OpenEdge, Work, Table Partitioning. We run the policy program, setting the -big D startup parameter to 1000. 10 partition policy details are created. Finally, we verify that the partition policy details have been created for the TP purchase order table in the SportsCo database. From the Database Administration console, we click Database Administration, Database Connections. We click the SportsCo database connection. From the Storage Management section, we click Partition Policies. We click Edit Details in the Action column of the TP Purchase Order Partition Policy. The Edit Table Partition Policy page appears. Note that there are 10 partition policy details associated with the TP Purchase Order Partition Policy, one for each supplier ID num. We have now created a partition policy and partition policy details using the ABL API. For more information about OpenEdge Table Partitioning, take the Implementing Progress OpenEdge Table Partitioning course.